Anxiety is the most common chronic condition in the world. So 1 in 4 people have anxiety.
In terms of when you were running a practice, can you talk a bit more on the demographics and the kind of people you were focusing on, or you were became a specialist in, and then what were the trends you were seeing, observing, and insights you were observing in the cohort you were catering to?
Yeah, so I predominantly worked with adults most of that time. I did have, because I had my referral pathway was mainly through general practitioners. So mostly adults, ranging from 18 upwards. And then sometimes I had some trickles of kids that came in. So, but predominantly, even in my marketing of myself, it was, adults. Yeah, and I even had like 90-year-old clients as well. So, I think predominantly early on in my career, I saw people with anxiety. So that was probably the presenting condition that I was seeing mostly. And that makes sense because anxiety is the most common chronic condition in the world. So 1 in 4 people have anxiety. So, and that's statistically. So I think there's so many people out there that are suffering in silence. Stress-related conditions, and of course, burnout is a big one, and I would be safe to say even outside of private practice now, because I do a lot of coaching still, so I'm not in clinic, but I still work with a lot of high-performing professionals, and burnout's a big one. Yeah.
What are the physical signs of knowing that you are in a stage of crisis or burnout? How do you, as an individual, because I feel it's more of an echo chamber if you are in a workspace and all of your colleagues are having that same kind of a work culture, working 16 hours a day, probably, working hard, and then every time everybody is trying to, do one up the other.
Yes.
And then you behave in that echo chamber in a certain fashion. What are the physical levers of indicators for you to see that, you are reaching the stage of crisis or burnout?
Yes. And like you said, sometimes you're in an industry, aren't you? It might be a workplace or just an inherently stressful industry where there's a slow becoming to be burnout that you almost don't even realise that you're burnt out. You've just become, because burnout, there's a slow creep. It just, you don't wake up and go, I'm burnt out. Like sometimes your body and mind have been whispering to you for weeks or months and sometimes years before you get to that point. So when I'm talking to people about burnout prevention, I get them thinking about what are those initial warning signals that you're often too busy to even notice that there's something ringing there. Your body's like, hey, slow down, but you're too busy. You just keep going. And if everyone's like that, if that's your culture, you don't even notice, do you? Like if everyone's scrambling and being the same, you don't notice until you hit breaking point. So when we talk about burnout, so burnout is the physical, mental, emotional and spiritual exhaustion as a result of excessive demands placed on someone, and their internal resources, are limited. So you can break it up into the physical, mental, emotional, spiritual kind of signals or symptoms or signs. So I think physically it would be just that absolute exhaustion, and not a tiredness that will be recovered in a good night's sleep. You're waking up tired, you're dragging your body along the floor, that type of fatigue, and it's body fatigue as well. It's not just your eyes are tired, it's your body fatigue. It could be loss of appetite, just can't eat anymore, constantly being sick, like sometimes when we're run down, we catch all the colds, all the viruses, and it happens way too often. So if that's happening all the time is a sign. Chronic pain flare up. Sometimes we have old injuries or pain. If you're not dealing with your emotions, your back's sore. Like I think, we can all pinpoint that happens to us. So that's some of your sleeping problems is another one. So physically that. Mentally, literally can't think straight. Can't be creative, you're procrastinating on things, you're disconnected from people around you, can't focus, all those sorts of things. Are you resonating with this? Are you?
I'm thinking of what happens to me is when I wake up and look in the mirror, I have more grey in my. So when I have more grey, if I have a stressful week, I'll have more grey in my beard. And if I have a more calmer week, the gray goes back to more black.
Yes.
So the density of gray versus black,
Yes.
that was a telltale sign for me to see, oh yes, that was a bad week, or that was a
Yes.
lighter week.
Yeah, and that's the thing is like people's skin might change, so they might get kind of flare-ups or the exacerbation of health conditions like eczema might flare up, or autoimmune condition they have will just kind of turn itself back on again. So all those sorts of things, your body is like screaming at you. The body says no, doesn't it?
Yes,
a
very
lot of
much.
the time.